For centuries, there was a single food in medieval Europe that no fortune could reliably buy. Kings competed for access to it. Popes placed it under official legal protection. Physicians prescribed it in place of medicine. The food was a wheel of mold-covered blue cheese, and the real reason it commanded that power is far stranger than any legend that has been told about it. The story, as we are about to show, sits at the intersection of geography, monopoly, and a biological accident that medieval science could observe but never explain. This video covers the true history of Roquefort, the world's oldest documented blue cheese, and the chain of events that turned a mold-veined wheel of curd into one of the most jealously controlled commodities in the medieval world. We trace the story from its accidental discovery in the limestone caves of southern France, through a papal decree, to a royal charter in 1411 that made it legally irreplicable anywhere in Europe. What makes this story genuinely worth understanding is that the medieval belief sitting at the center of it, the bizarre reason the powerful wanted Roquefort so desperately, turns out to have been scientifically correct all along. They had no way of knowing that yet, but by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why they were right. Somewhere between the 7th and 10th centuries, a young shepherd grazing his flock on the high limestone plateau above the village of Roquefort-sur-Soulzon in southern France stopped for a midday meal near the entrance of one of the local caves. Historical accounts, shaped over centuries into what is now part foundation myth, part documented record, describe him leaving behind his rye bread and fresh sheep's curd when he spotted someone in the distance and left to follow them. When he returned days later, the cool darkness and moisture of the cave had done something extraordinary to what he left behind. The bread had bloomed with blue-green mold, the curd had absorbed it completely, and what sat in that cave entrance was no longer food as he recognized it. Whether the account is exact history or refined legend, the fungal science it describes is entirely real, and its consequences would prove more significant than anything the shepherd could have imagined. The caves of Combalou are not ordinary limestone formations. They are riddled with natural vertical air channels called fluorines, deep fissures that pull cold air from underground and circulate it continuously through the cave system, creating a stable microenvironment of approximately 9 degrees Celsius year-round with humidity between 95 and 99%. These are the precise conditions under which Penicillium roqueforti, the mold responsible for blue cheese's distinctive veining, thrives and propagates. No other location in France or in continental Europe offered those exact conditions naturally and consistently. The accident of geography that placed a shepherd's lunch inside those specific caves was not just a culinary event. It was the founding moment of a food monopoly that would last over 1,000 years. Medieval physicians working within humoral medicine, the dominant medical framework of the age, began to notice something they could not categorize or explain. Patients who regularly consumed Roquefort appeared to recover faster from certain wound infections. Monks who documented cases in monastic medical records observed that applying small amounts of the cheese's blue-green mold to infected tissue seemed to resist the festering and gangrene that killed the majority of infection patients in that era. These were careful, observational men working without a microscope, without any theory of bacterial infection, and without any framework for understanding fungal chemistry. What they were recording, without any language to name it, was the antimicrobial effect of Penicillium roqueforti, the same genus of fungus that Alexander Fleming would isolate in a sterile London laboratory in 1928, 9 full centuries later. The medical archives of several Benedictine monasteries from the 11th and 12th centuries are now recognized as containing some of the earliest documented observations of antimicrobial food therapy in European history. If this hidden history has you hooked, take 2 seconds right now, hit the like button, and subscribe. We uncover documented stories like this every single week, and you will not want to miss what is coming next. By the reign of Charlemagne in the late 8th century, Roquefort's reputation had already reached the highest levels of European power. The most frequently cited historical account places Charlemagne's first encounter with the cheese at a monastery in southern France, most likely the Abbey of Vabres near Millau, where a bishop served it as part of a religious feast. According to later medieval chronicles, Charlemagne initially began cutting away the blue veins, assuming they indicated spoilage. The bishop reportedly stopped him and explained that the veining was precisely the point. Charlemagne ate it, reconsidered immediately, and arranged for 2 crates of Roquefort to be delivered to his court in Aachen every year from that point forward. That single standing royal order created a template that every powerful court in Europe would follow for the next 6 centuries. Roquefort was not merely purchased, it was formally commissioned. The scarcity equation governing Roquefort was unlike anything that applied to other medieval luxury goods. Gold could be mined in new locations. Wine could be expanded through newly planted vineyards. Silk could theoretically be produced wherever a supply chain could be established. Roquefort could not be scaled by any of those methods. The Combalou caves had fixed dimensions, fixed airflow, and a fixed aging capacity determined entirely by geology. The Lacon sheep, whose milk carries the precise fat and protein composition required for authentic Roquefort, grazed only on the plateau above the caves and produced milk only between January and July. Every variable in the production chain was capped by biology and geography simultaneously. The monks who held the keys to those caves did not need to manufacture scarcity. The caves had already done that for them. In 1070 AD, Pope Urban VI, the same pope who in 1095 would launch the First Crusade, issued a formal decree granting the village of Roquefort-sur-Soulzon explicit and exclusive rights over the production and naming of the cheese. This was not a symbolic cultural honor. It was a legally enforceable monopoly backed by one of the 2 most powerful institutions in medieval Europe, meaning any rival producer who attempted to sell imitation Roquefort under that name faced potential ecclesiastical sanction. The decree predated modern geographical food protections, France's appellation d'origine contrôlée, and the EU's protected designation of origin by nearly 9 centuries, making it arguably the earliest documented example of a branded geographical food identity in recorded history. With that decree, the Catholic Church had officially recognized Roquefort not merely as a food, but as a protected institution. The most consequential legal moment in Roquefort's history arrived on June 4, 1411, when King Charles VI of France issued a royal charter granting the inhabitants of Roquefort-sur-Soulzon the exclusive right to age cheese inside the Combalou caves, and criminalized the production of imitation Roquefort anywhere else in France under financial penalties enforceable by royal authority. Food historians regard this charter as the earliest documented appellation in the world, the direct legal ancestor of every wine classification, every cheese certification, and every geographical food protection that exists anywhere on Earth today. What Charles VI had done in practical terms was take the natural accident of a limestone cave system and convert it into permanent national law. France had written the first chapter of a legal tradition that now governs more than 10,000 protected food and drink products worldwide. Historical records from the 13th and 14th centuries document specific transactions in which Roquefort functioned not merely as a luxury food, but as a recognized unit of exchange. In several recorded land lease agreements from the Aveyron region, portions of aged Roquefort wheels were accepted as partial payment alongside coin, meaning that a physical piece of mold-covered cheese was assigned a calculable monetary value inside a formal legal contract. Gold was universally valuable because it was universally accessible to those with enough wealth to obtain it. It could be sourced, traded, and transported across Europe by any merchant with sufficient capital. Roquefort could not be replicated by capital alone. When the caves were at capacity and royal courts across France and Germany were competing for the same allocation, no amount of coin moved you up that list. The medieval market for Roquefort was not a luxury market. It was a market operating under conditions of genuine, unresolvable, and permanent scarcity, which is an entirely different economic phenomenon. The monks who managed the Combalou cave system had developed, over generations, a distribution and allocation network of genuine organizational sophistication. Production schedules were coordinated around the Lacon sheep's natural milking window, January through July, with aging timelines planned months in advance to ensure finished wheels were available at the peak demand points of the liturgical calendar, Easter and the Christmas feast period. Correspondence between monasteries documents the tracking of individual consignments, the designation of specific wheels for specific recipients, and the careful negotiation of allocations with royal representatives. What had begun as an accident in a limestone cave had become, by the 13th century, a fully administered supply operation, one in which the administrators never needed to advertise, never needed to discount, and never once produced more product than the market required. It was a distribution system built entirely on restraint, and restraint, in any market, is the most powerful pricing mechanism that has ever existed. Modern microbiological analysis has confirmed what those medieval observers could only record empirically. Penicillium roqueforti produces several bioactive compounds, including roquefortine C and mycophenolic acid, both of which have demonstrated antimicrobial properties in controlled laboratory conditions. While these compounds do not carry the clinical potency of pharmaceutical penicillin, their real-world effect in medieval conditions, where the alternatives to infection treatment were heat cauterization, herbal poultices, or nothing, would have been measurable and, in some documented cases, life-saving. The medieval physicians who prescribed Roquefort for wound treatment were, in retrospect, practicing a form of evidence-based medicine without any of the scientific framework to support it. They had no germ theory, no microscope, no understanding of fungal chemistry, and no concept of antibiotic action, and they reached the correct clinical outcome anyway. The 9-century gap between their empirical observation and the laboratory confirmation is one of the most remarkable convergences in the history of food and science. Roquefort is sold today for roughly 30 to 50 euro per kilogram, protected under France's appellation d'origine contrôlée and the European Union's protected designation of origin, legal systems that trace their direct ancestry to the Royal Charter of 1411. The Combalou caves still operate. The Lacon sheep still graze the Aveyron Plateau. The Penicillium roqueforti spores still drift through the natural fluorines as they have done for over 1,000 years. What changed is only our understanding of the chemistry. We now know precisely why the medieval physicians were observing what they were observing, and why they were right to take it as seriously as they did. The bizarre reason blue cheese was once worth more than gold was never superstition, never theater, and never simple luxury. It was the result of a shepherd's abandoned lunch landing inside the only place on Earth where a specific, irreplicable biological accident could happen. The caves have been there for millions of years. The only thing that changed is that once, a shepherd left his lunch in one of them. If you learned something in this video, do 3 things right now. Hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss another hidden food history, and drop a comment below. Tell us which food you think is hiding a secret history we have not uncovered yet. We read every single one.